The civil services examination is considered to be the world's toughest examination. Yet year after year, hundreds of candidates, depending on the vacancies, qualify this prestigious examination. And if you look at all these successful candidates, they have one thing in common. They are guided well. They are effectively mentored. They get proper guidance. Every alternate Saturday on this platform, on Byju's Exam Prep app, we organize workshops and seminars to guide the civil services aspirants. Today we thought, let's have our student, this year's civil services examination topper, Miss SHRUTI Sharma, guide you. So listen to her carefully. Make a note of all that she's going to share with you, because she's going to share her preparation strategy, some tricks, tips, techniques to crack this examination, which she hasn't shared anywhere. So over to you, Miss SHRUTI. She will share her experiences, and after that, we will take a look at some of the important questions. We asked the aspirants, share your doubts, questions, queries, and we will ask SHRUTI to answer and clarify your doubts. Your questions are safe with us. We will take a look at these questions after SHRUTI is done with her session. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. So today I'm here. My name is SHRUTI Sharma. I secured AIR 1 in the recently concluded Civil Services Examination 2021. And today I'm here to mainly talk about how I went about my preparation. And this is for people, as sir said, it is considered as one of the toughest examinations in the world, in India. So just in terms of a preliminary thing, in terms of if you've decided to give this examination, if you've decided that, this is something that I want to do, if it's something that you really want to do in terms of working on the ground, or the administrative services, or the foreign services, or the police services is something that excites you, then deciding to give this examination and preparing for this examination are two different things. And so I'll just basically give you an idea of the structure of this examination, how to tackle the different stages of this examination, how I personally tackled this examination, and if that, somehow helps you, I'll be really, really glad. Right? So let me start in terms of the exam strategy and what it entails. So as all of you know, that this examination consists of three different stages. First is the preliminary examination, which consists of two papers. First is the general studies paper, which has a certain merit list. And the second part is the CSAT paper, which involves English language, then reasoning, mathematics, all of that. And the second part, which is the CSAT, is the qualifying paper. Right? Then we come to the mains. So if you qualify this first step, you enter the second stage of this examination, which is the mains examination. After the prelims result and the mains examination, there is a gap of 2 to 3 months which you have to prepare for the mains examination. This is something that you have to do before also, but there's a gap of 2 to 3 months. So the mains examination has 9 papers, out of which 2 are compulsory papers. One is English, which is compulsory. The second is a regional language. So it was Hindi for me, but it can be any other regional language which you are comfortable with and you have studied. Apart from those 2 compulsory papers, which are qualifying in nature, there are 4 general studies papers. General studies 1, which is history, geography, social issues. GS2 is polity and international affairs and governance. GS3 is lots of economy, environment, disaster management, internal security, science and technology. And GS4 is ethics, right? So these are 4 general studies papers. Apart from that, there's an essay paper. There are 2 optional papers as well, whichever optional you choose. Mine was history. You can have a different optional, be it sociology, be it mechanical engineering, be it agriculture. There are lots of optionals for you to choose from, right? So these are 9 papers, out of which 7 are those in which marks are calculated and are added to your third stage. So if you qualify, if you get a requisite number of marks in the mains examination, you qualify to the third stage, which is the personality test or the interview. And the mains marks and the personality test marks are together added, which finally makes your final score, on the basis of which you are recommended for any of the particular services, which are 19 or 20 different services, which will finally, get your name in the final list that the UPSC comes out with, which came out this 30th of May. Right, so this is the structure of this examination. In terms of how to prepare for this examination, you must understand that although the preliminary examination is the first examination, the preparation is not such that you prepare for the prelims first and then the mains and then the personality test. It's a wholesome preparation. It's an integrated preparation. So you have to prepare for roughly all three stages at one go, in terms of preparing the foundation and the base. And gradually, just before the prelims, you have to slightly tweak your preparation according to the questions that are answered there. Similarly for the mains and the personality test. So overall, you have to plan your preparation in terms of a wholesome preparation. When you're sitting for the prelims examination, make sure that your base for the mains is already ready, right? But there are certain changes and tweaks which I'll later talk about in this workshop. Right, so then we go to the so in terms of how to begin. So once you've decided you're giving this examination, you've understood the structure of this examination, how do you begin your integrated preparation? Your integrated preparation will only begin, first of all, if you have to crack something, you have to know what it is and what is the subject content of what you're sort of attempting, and how to tackle it. You can only get to know the how once you know the what, right? So what is the syllabus? One thing that I would suggest all future aspirants or all current aspirants of the examination to understand is the syllabus. Be it the preliminary examination syllabus or the mains examination syllabus. I personally found the mains examination syllabus to be the best guide for me in terms of how to attempt the questions, how to prepare my notes, how to understand the subject. So make sure that you know exactly what the syllabus is for GS 1, 2, 3 and 4 in terms of the mains examination. When you're going through any other material, for example, any current affairs magazine or the newspaper or any other NCRT, make sure that you have the syllabus in mind, and through that lens, you're looking at whatever material is being provided to you. That will be a guide as to what to read and what not to read. Because this is one question which lots of people ask me, what do we study? How do we know what is important? How do we know what is not important? I feel knowing the syllabus can be the first and most important guide in knowing what to study and what not to study, right? So firstly, know what the syllabus is. Based on the syllabus, whatever books that you decide to follow, whatever basic books that you decide, get to know the concepts behind all of that. So for example, Parliament is something that you're studying. Get to know the working of the Parliament, how it is how it's functioning. For example, from the point of view of prelims, know the composition of the Parliament. From the point of view of the mains, get to know in terms of the data, in terms of the women representation in the Parliament, the lower caste representation in the Parliament. Get to know, when you're reading a concept, get to know the wholesome, understanding of that concept. If you're, say, talking about geography, how a certain, weather phenomena comes into place, the consequences of that weather phenomena, in terms of examples where all that weather phenomena has happened in the recent time period, the disasters related to that. So get to know the basics, only then go on to the next part. Reading books should not be your main aim. After you get to know the syllabus, whether it's science, whether it's history, get to know the basic concepts. Understand it. If you can't understand it from one book, go and look at any, for example, YouTube video if you can find. Go and ask a teacher. But make sure that you understand something, because merely rote learning is not going to get you anywhere, right? So if you're gaining knowledge, make sure to understand the how, why, what, when, and then go forward. So get to know the basics. The basics can be provided to you by any basic NCRTs or any other basic books you're following for each subject, be it polity, be it geography. And once you get to know the basics, so here again, another challenge comes up, because some people really, for example, like to read history. and they really get into the depth. So based on the second part, which I'm talking about, they really get into the depth about, say, any event which has happened. So you look at some 10 different videos based on that because you really want to get to know about it. But then you forget that you have to cover the entire syllabus. So make sure there's a balance between both. You're also understanding what you're reading. You're having a certain amount of interest in it. You're understanding the implications and the other examples of that point, but at the same time you're also understanding that you're not completing a PhD on that subject. You have to appear for this examination. So knowledge should definitely not be instrumental only for this examination, but your goal in mind in terms of attempting the civil services examination should also be kept in mind, because say for the 4 GS papers there are 10 different subjects to cover. Apart from that, you have optional also, you have your essay also. So make sure that your time management is such that although you're going through the basic books, you're understanding concepts, but you're dividing time as such so that all your subjects are being covered. Because merely gaining a lot of knowledge in one subject and completely neglecting the other subject is not going to get you anywhere in terms of this examination, right? So make sure that you know the syllabus, you get your basics right, you're following your basic books, and thirdly, you're covering the entire syllabus. You're dividing your time in such a way that no subject is being neglected. So once you decide that, this is in terms of a continuation of what I was earlier talking about. Once you've decided that you're giving this examination, you've sort of gotten your basic material ready, you need to understand the subject content and what all you need you need to divide your time for. So you're creating certain targets, say for the month, for the week, for the entire year. So right now, if you have decided if I'm giving the next attempt, I'm giving my examination in 2023, or if I'm giving my examination in 2024, make sure that you know what all you have to cover, right? So sometimes what people do is, they, they have a lot of excitement initially when the results have come, I'm going to crack this exam. Examination the next time. I go to the market, I pick up the nearest books that are close to me or whatever I've read on the internet, and I just start reading it with full gusto, full this thing, and that slowly dies down. The second month. Make sure that you have a plan in terms of how you're going to chart out your preparation for the entire year, roughly, even if not to the T, but roughly in terms of what you have to do in the next coming, say, 1 year or 2 years as to how to divide your preparation. So there are certain divisions in which you can make. Firstly, there are certain subjects in general studies which will be helpful for both mains and prelims. So this involves, say, polity, geography, history, economics, environment, science and technology. These are subjects which will help you in both prelims and mains. At the same time, there are certain subjects which will only be helpful for mains. So something like ethics, which is part of GS4, disaster management, internal security, governance, social issues. Apart from that, there is optional, which will only help you in the mains roughly. Although, say, for example, history was my optional, or sociology. Sometimes that, knowledge does help you in the prelims as well. But sometimes, for example, if you have agriculture as your option or Telugu literature as your optional, it won't help you. So dividing your time in terms of that. Apart from that, when you have done your basic basic content study. Uske baad there is answer writing. There is answer writing for mains and there is mock tests for prelims. So once your base is ready, then you start your answer writing. So these are certain things that you have to do at least. These are things you have to do at least before you give your next attempt. That, you know, when you start out, there are certain basic subjects that you are covering. You are starting with polity, which will provide a base for your general studies paper 2 and will also help you in, say, parts of ethics, governance, sometimes in your essay paper as well. So make sure that you cover polity, you cover history, you cover geography, you cover economics. These are key subjects that you have to, I personally feel, start out with also, because they'll prepare the base for your entire preparation. Once all of these major subjects are done, including environment, from whatever 1 or 2 books that you're relying on, after that, I think towards say 5 months before prelims, when you've not started your prelims preparation, but after you have sort of done 1 or 2 basic readings of your complete subject, then you, I think, also can move towards subject like ethics, disaster management, internal security, governance and social issues, which I personally call low-hanging fruits, because in terms of the mains examination, because these are subjects that you can prepare really well. There are 2-3 questions, say, on internal security, which definitely come year after year. If you have good notes prepared on them, if you have good material prepared on them, then a little amount of study can fetch you those good marks in those 4 questions. So identify those areas. Similarly, ethics, there's an entire paper on ethics, GS4. So spend some time on that. These are certain papers that will not help you in prelims. These are not subjects which help you in prelims. But if you have good content prepared on them before you give your prelims examination, you don't have enough time in, say, the 2 and 3 months immediately after your prelims examination to work on these subjects. So make sure that you work on these subjects before you give your prelims in the first attempt as well, right? So this is something that you can do. Apart from that, you can divide your time in the day, say, between GS and optional early on. Some people start with the optional and then sort of a few weeks they give optional, then they complete certain subjects, then move to GS. So in terms of your time division, that is something that you can decide yourself. But make sure that you're spending certain time on optional as well. One thing I would suggest you to do is not leave mains preparation for after prelims, because people get stuck in this cycle of giving prelims year after year after year. So make sure that your mains preparation is done to a certain extent, at least 60%, 70% before you give your first examination, right? Once that is done, then spend some time, say 3 to 4 months before your prelims starting with answer writing. At the same time, make sure that, you're also giving certain mock tests throughout, or especially towards the last 3 months before the prelims examination. That is the time I think you should increase your attempting of prelims mock tests, or say attempting previous year question papers, because that is the time your mind is sort of going through that objective sort of data, specially geared towards the prelims. So this is in terms of your overall targeting and scheduling of the entire year's preparation, especially in terms of say the requirement of this examination. If I have to sort of sum it up, if I'm asked to sum it up in a few words, first is subject understanding, so conceptual understanding of whatever a subject is very important both in prelims and mains and interview. Unless and until you understand it, the application based questions that are recently coming in, especially the last 3 or 4 years, you won't be able to handle, be it in prelims, be it in mains. Merely rote understanding will not help you. First is subject understanding. Second, analytical skill in interlinking. Because even if a certain concept is given in the syllabus, a certain question is asked, that verbatim question will not be asked to you in the prelims examination. There'll be 6-7 different options, different application-based options. So unless and until you link 2 or 3 subjects, you won't be able to answer them. If you're, say, reading about certain science and technology, innovation in a page on the Hindu, on the science and technology page, if it's related to agriculture, make sure that you're also using it in your GS3 paper in, say, an agriculture question. Or, for example, a disaster management, if a question on water crisis is coming there, if you're using it in environment and it's related to, say, the Mihir Shah Committee on water crisis, use it in a disaster management question as well. So constant interlinking, constant analytical skills, I think, is required in this examination. Apart from that, apart from the subject understanding and linkage, time management is very important, because even though you have the correct amount of knowledge, you have the correct strategy, if you're not dividing your time well, nothing can be done. And again, most importantly is the management of stress, because there's constant ups and downs, questioning, lack of motivation will constantly plague you throughout this preparation, and it doesn't matter who you are. For example, right now I am supposedly the topper of this examination. I went through exactly the same thing as most of you are going through. Immediately, say 3 to 4 days before the results were coming in, I was going through I was extremely anxious as to how the results are going to be. I had no clue that I'll get such a good rank. So whoever they are, whatever stage they are at this examination, will be going through a lot of stress, lot of anxiety, lot of questioning that you will be going through. But make sure that you're giving your %, you're also doing something to balance that stress. So whatever works for you, be it meditation, be it I used to take really long walks when I was feeling really stressed, spending some time with your parents, with your friends, a positive environment. Make sure you have certain things around you or certain things that you do to manage that stress. Okay, so this is in terms of this entire preparation. Now we'll go to specific parts of this preparation. So first is prelims. What did I do before my prelims examination? I personally was not a person who was very, very, confident about my prelims. Both prelims that I gave, I found it to be the most challenging phase of this examination in terms of prelims, mains, and interview. I was really skeptical even after I had given my prelims. But I think what worked for me overall was firstly keeping my materials limited. So I had one book for, say, economy, or one notes that I followed for economy. I had one book, say, Lakshmikant for polity, I followed that for polity. So one basic book I kept for most of my subjects. I had limited materials for subjects that I did not have a book for. I prepared very limited notes, which I used to revise. Secondly, current affairs, you can't neglect current affairs. For that also, I kept my sources very limited. I had one specific thing which I used, whether it was yearly compilation or it was my own notes. I had one thing. I constantly related, say, whatever I was reading in the static part with my current affairs. If there was something that I found, I read in the newspaper, right? So if I was not finding it anywhere else, I used to Google search it, find, say, when did this, for example, this event is mentioned, when did it happen, who was the first person associated with it, or some technology related thing is there, what are the implications for it, or say the S-400 missile is something that I read in the news, who has created this, who is buying it, what it is being used for. So these things I used to Google search sometimes. If I did not find in anything. So make sure that you're interrelating your current affairs with your static material, constantly asking questions, right? And thirdly is multiple revisions. One time reading a book is going to get you nowhere, because I think I personally, when I read all my books for the first time, the next time I picked it up, it was almost as if I had not gone through those books at all. So merely reading one book once and reading 10 books is not going to help you. One thing that lots of people say, I don't have any problem reading. I find it really interesting reading something, but going back to the same thing is the biggest challenge for me. So I agree with you. Revision can sometimes be a really big burden. Going back to the same thing may get a little boring, but make sure that you do that, because otherwise the effort that you're putting in the first time is also not going to bear fruit for you. So make sure you have some sort of external accountability person if you can't do it yourself. Sometimes I used to make groups of 2-3 people. We used to set targets in terms of कि अच्छा आज part 3 खत्म करना है polity का ये this that, and we used to by the end of the day, we used to ask each other, have you done that? Or you used to sometimes sit together and study. If you don't have those sort of people around you who are preparing for this examination, ask your mother, ask some other friend of yours to, keep a check on you in terms of this is something that I want to do today. Tell them in the morning and have some sort of tiny reward for you or tiny punishment for you if you're not doing that. So create certain things which will help you revise, keep to that revision schedule, because revision is very, very important for any stage of this examination, especially for prelims, right? So this is in terms of the basic strategy. Making a revision schedule. I made a revision schedule for the last 3-4 months because that is the time you very, very, in a very streamlined way, you study for prelims specifically. So I used to make sure that I used to do at least 2 and at least 3 revisions. And the nature of the revision can differ, because first time you're reading the entire book, second time you're sort of reading only the underlying bits, third time when you're revising, you're, jumping. So there's this term in, say, polity, you read in terms of kangaroo clause. So it's literally a kangaroo clause, you're only jumping to the important parts of the book which you think will help you, even in the current affairs. So make a revision schedule for the last 3 or 4 months. That personally helped me. Sticking to one source, whatever basic book that worked for you. Thirdly, and very, very importantly, something that I haven't talked about yet, apart from the syllabus, for the prelims, something that helped me was the previous year question papers. Use your previous year question papers as a guide. I say, for example, looked at previous 10 to 15 years papers theme wise. Say, for example, if I'm doing history, so I read my basic book, whatever I had, and then I used to go to the previous year question papers based on modern history and go through those questions, look at the other options sometimes, or something that I don't know about. There's a question which is completely different. I used to just Google search it or find that concept in a specific book and try to read more about it. So that sometimes helps. One example that I give is, for example, a question on Mongols, which came in the previous year paper, say 2020 paper, and lots of people could not attempt that question. So, for example, if you're going through that previous year question paper, if you just go home and look for, say, when did the Mongols come to India, how many times did they come, who was the ruler there, so at that time you do that. Even if you didn't answer that question that time, in 2021, another question on Mongols came. So the topic was the same. There were slight, differences in how the question was question was framed, and obviously the question was also slightly different. But if someone had gone back and analyzed that previous year question paper, he or she would have been able to answer that question this year. Similarly, for polity, certain questions on, say, the right to privacy, which fundamental right it is. These questions have been repeated verbatim, like in 2 years or 3 years. So make sure that you use your previous year question papers as a guide in terms of the language of questions, how options are framed, in terms of subject content. So this thing definitely helped me. Especially, I think, for history, certain sections, say Buddhism, Jainism, I prepared separate notes for that. So use previous year question papers if there are certain sections which, there are like loopholes or lapses in your preparation. Make sure that you prepare notes of those specific sections, 1-page or 2-page notes, which you find in the previous year question papers, but not anywhere else. So that was really helpful for me. So that is something that I personally suggest you can do and you should do. And some other people who score really good marks in prelims have also advised me to do. Thirdly is mock tests. So if, for example, if you complete a certain subject, you can go back and prepare and, attempt a sectional test of that specific subject. It will really help you for revision and also, evaluating yourself, because sometimes you read something but it's not really imbibed by you, so you can attempt mock tests of that particular sectional. Secondly, it also helps you in figuring out how many to attempt. I personally feel not in terms of, say, sectional paper, but towards the end those complete mock tests come including all papers. So if you attempt, say, 20 papers of that sort, you get to know how many sort of questions you're comfortable attempting. Some people attempt only 80 questions in the final paper. I personally was not very sure about my accuracy, so I attempted close to 95 questions in my final paper both times. So what works for you also, sometimes you get to know in terms of those middle wala questions. You don't know if you're attempting right or not, but that nature of questions where you've made a tukka, at the end, when you're analyzing those questions, try to see how many of those tukkas were right and how many of those tukkas were wrong. So over a period of time, over say 10 or 15 papers that you attempt, you get to know if your tukkebazi is something which is working or not, right? So that is something that you can analyze based on both these mock tests as well as attempting of previous year question papers. So at the end, say 1 week before the final examination, the last 3 or 4 years question papers, previous year question papers, try to attempt in those 2 hours and see how many of you are getting how many right. Right. Another thing that I tried to do towards the end was making a small prelims booklet. So that was just one booklet that I had for very quick revision. So for example, if there's some mock test that I attempted and there were some questions that I did wrong, or there are certain questions which I'm doing repeatedly wrong, something which I can't remember at all in any specific book. So I used to have two pages, say, for one subject. So polity, similarly geography, or so some map work based questions. I used to just write down in one line whatever was wrong. And towards the end, I used to just flip through that tiny booklet for other things that I had missed out. So that I personally did. You can do if go for that, and you'll get to know, like, make sure that you're self-analyzing at regular intervals in technology, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence. It's clearly mentioned rather than just, picking up a science and technology book and reading it cover to cover. It's helpful if you have 1 or 2 pages of notes or just underlined stuff, even if you're reading from a book according to the syllabus. So keep the syllabus as your guide. That is something that I did. For areas that I did not have notes for, I made notes for, whether it be it through online sources or any other material. Similarly, previous year question papers. Sometimes, say for GS3, if you go through certain economy questions of the previous 5 to 6 years, you sometimes realize that, sometimes questions are not asked clearly from the static portions, but they're very, current affairs based questions in economy, say. So in that area, you will not put a lot of emphasis on the static notes that you prepare from the syllabus, but say economy things that have happened in the past, 2 years based on current affairs. So analyzing previous year question papers in terms of what sort of questions are asked from each section of the paper is also something that is very important. Similarly for ethics, the nature of questions, sometimes you get to know case studies if you answer from previous year question papers. You get to know in terms of how to structure the answers. So previous year question papers and syllabus, I would strongly recommend for anyone who wants to fetch slightly more marks in the mains examination. They should definitely not neglect. Secondly is note making. This again, it depends from person to person. I personally made notes. There are some people who are not very comfortable making notes, but I personally found note making to be helpful for me. For sticking to the syllabus and not reading any unnecessary stuff. And secondly, also for quick revisions. Say for my optional studies, history is a very, very vast optional. So I made notes based on the books that I was reading, and towards the end, I did not go back to any of the books. I only used my notes for it. So it depends from person to person and whatever subject that you're studying. But I personally found note making to be very, very helpful for me in, consolidating my material and quick revision. Thirdly is in-depth understanding of current affairs. The current affairs that some people, go through for prelims, the way that they go through current affairs for prelims is slightly different from the way that you go through it for your mains and your personality test parts, because just rote memorizing as to how and what organization comes out with a particular index or comes out with a particular report is not important enough. You also need to know why certain current affairs is happening, the history of that thing. So for example, if something has happened in international affairs, a pact has been signed between India and Japan, or a pact has been signed between India and China, you need to know the history of India-China relations. You need to know the causes of the current relations. You need to know the consequences of the current pact. You also have to suggest certain way forward in terms of how that relationship should go forward. So a more in-depth understanding of current affairs is important, so that you can work on, be it through say certain current affairs magazines if you're following, or if certain issue, if you want to go in depth, going through a YouTube video of that particular thing. So that is something that you have to work out yourself, or reading the newspaper. So I personally use the newspaper as a guide for especially for my current affairs journey, for my mains examination, the articles in the newspaper or certain parts, other parts, going in depth. Thirdly is consolidated material. This will be a combination of whatever I have talked about earlier, based on the syllabus, based on previous question papers, note making, make certain consolidated material. And again, I can't stress this enough, answer writing. You may know everything there is to know about a subject. You may talk about it for hours on end, but when it comes to finishing or consolidating and writing all of that material within 7 minutes, it may be very, very challenging for you, especially if you're doing it for the first time immediately before your mains examination. So make sure you're practicing answer writing, and there are certain improvements that you will need to do along the way. No one will write a perfect answer the first time they write an answer. So make sure that you start that journey early on, once you've sort of, gone through roughly the syllabus once or twice, so that that improvement can be made in terms of the time and content. So note making, I think I've already talked about this. The when, the where, the why, the history, the way forward, what to go ahead for. This is something that you should do while you're preparing your notes only. So for example, something like the judiciary, which is mentioned in the syllabus, the problems in the judiciary, certain data. Say, I remember the National Judicial Data Grid has some 4.3 crore cases still pending. So if you're beginning an answer by writing this data, this should be in your notes only. So when, for example, if you see a question on the judiciary, you don't have to think too much at that time only as to what should I write in my introduction. So preparing notes according to that, certain history, then what are the problems plaguing the judiciary, what are the solutions to it, all of this you can make in your notes. This is also something as to how your studying approach should be when you're preparing for this examination, right? So overall, it will lead to a better understanding of the topic, and that better understanding will reflect in your answers in, say, the personality test or in your mains examination, and similarly in your application in the prelims examination. So don't, underestimate the importance of, properly understanding a topic and implementing it in the final paper. So note making is done. Thirdly is answer writing. Specifically when you're preparing an answer, or when you're going through this process of answer writing, make sure that you understand the demand of the question. you're only answering what is being asked of you and not like unnecessary things. Then structuring of the question. Once you've understood the demand of the question, make sure that you have some sort of structure in terms of introduction, body, conclusion. If there are certain different parts of the question, you can make subheadings based on that part. You can have a visual sort of structuring also in terms of leaving a margin, starting points from a certain point. That is something that you can work on. As many dimensions as possible. Initially, I used to write in paragraphs. Later, I moved to points. Some people also write in paragraphs and yet include a lot of dimensions. So, writing in paragraphs or points is not the question, but making sure that your your answer is as broad as possible. Right. Thirdly is speed versus content. This is something that we've already talked about. Your note making and your understanding of the concept will take care of the content. Make sure that you have, enough examples, enough data, enough, points while you're going through your notes, while you're preparing your material, your consolidated material for the mains examination. But at the same time, also concentrate on the speed. Make sure that when you're writing a really nice answer, you're not writing it in 15 minutes or 10 marker. Because in that way, your last 5 questions will be left, your 15 markers will be left. So that balance between speed and content constantly needs to be maintained. So this will be your mains preparation in terms of GS. In terms of optional subject, lots of people ask me as to how and why, you should choose a certain optional subject. Make sure it's not something that, people are saying, this time the topper got this optional, so this is something that I will take, or this gets more marks. This is something, some people look at charts of how the last 10 years toppers have fared in a certain subject. That will not help you. First and foremost is your interest in the subject. If you're, say, from any other background, say engineering or something else, and you want to choose another subject, make sure that you go through the books of, say, 2-3 other optionals which you have interest in and see which, you'll be comfortable reading for long hours. So make sure that your interest is there. Secondly, you have materials, steady access of materials, especially if it's a subject that you do not know at all. So make sure that you have enough materials. If you have another person who has attempted that optional already, that would be a good person to go to. And again, for guidance. So guidance is someone who has gone through that journey yourself, can tell you the pros and cons. So if you're choosing an optional, make sure that you have a list of pros, you have a list of cons. Choose that option in which the cons you can manage and the pros are good enough for you sort of to pursue that preparation for a long period of time. So this is something I think I would suggest if you're choosing an optional. I personally chose history because it was my interest and I had certain material in it, and that guidance also I had through the, graduation that I had done in that subject. Then comes the third part of the preparation, third part of the examination, which is the personality test. Here, I think lots of you are just starting out, so I would not delve too much into it. But for those who are, I just say that, an in-depth research of your detailed application form is necessary. In-depth understanding of opinions on current affairs is something that you'll have already gone through in mains, so you'll continue with that. Thirdly, and more importantly, is something that you can, start from now on only in terms of start practicing talking. Start talking about your opinions, having group discussions with people around you if you feel that you're not comfortable talking in public. Practice speaking in front of the mirror or camera, record yourself, ask yourself a question and, record yourself and see if that answer could have been prepared any better. So this is something that you can start from very early on if that's something that, you have not done already, and it will help you in any other aspect of life as well. If you give interviews elsewhere also, even if not for the UPSC. And if you've done all of this, then mock interviews can sometimes help you in creating that same environment where, certain different types of questions which you don't know can also be answered. So this was basically the 3 aspects of the preparation. Overall, this is something that again we've talked about at the very beginning as well. Make sure that you have certain targets, be it daily, be it weekly, be it yearly. Consolidate your materials and use previous year question papers and the test series as a guide in terms of analyzing your development. Role of current affairs is important at all 3 stages of this examination. You can't neglect your current affairs. So in prelims, a lot of questions are asked there. In mains, even if it's not directly asked, your knowledge can be used in terms of enriching your answer. And obviously, a lot of direct questions based on current affairs are also asked. So you can't neglect current affairs at all for mains. And similarly for interview as well. in terms of opinion-based questions. It also helps you in helping you make a perspective. So even if you're answering a static-based question, a current affair-based topic, say on interstate disputes, but for example, if you go through the recent GST compensation cess issue, which was in the news, it'll help you better understand the context of interstate disputes, which you read in your polity thing. So constant interrelation it will help you with. And thirdly, it'll help you in terms of that knowledge will help you gain confidence to tackle all three stages. So even if, say, you go through your current affair booklets and it doesn't come in the final paper that from that specific thing, but I think confidence is very important. If you know that you've gone through that thing, you know a lot of it, even if you don't use it as it is, a lot of its application will help you. So that confidence of reading all the current affairs, the basic current affairs and the static material will help you tackle all the three stages of this examination head on. Lastly is the question, is coaching absolutely necessary? I feel, again, coaching is definitely never absolutely necessary. I think what you need for this examination is a certain strategy in terms of, say, whatever I talked about in terms of, say, targeting, making certain targets for yourself. Secondly, something that you need is basic material. And that basic material, you'll sort of decide yourself over a period of time what is important for you, what is good for you, what is not for you. And thirdly, I think regular stock taking and regular self-analysis. If that analysis can be provided from elsewhere. So that can be from a mentor, if you have one, or from any other source, guidance that you're getting. If, for example, you're going through a certain preparation strategy and it's not working for you, if you have that knowledge base in terms of setting that wrong right midway, then really, really good for you. If you don't have that, then seek a person around you who can help you with that. I think most important for this examination is confidence, and confidence that you're doing the right thing. So that confidence you can either get from yourself if you have that knowledge yourself. B, you can get it from any other source that is around you that can provide you a certain path or a strategy. So I think strategy, guidance, and a certain confidence I think is more important apart from a material. So you don't necessarily need to come to Delhi to spend a lot of money to do that, because year after year we see in this examination people from different various backgrounds, people from rural backgrounds, urban backgrounds, people from all states of India cracking this examination. So make sure that, that inner sort of thing, if you tell yourself that you have to come to Delhi to crack this examination, or you need coaching, then that is something that you're telling yourself, and that will shape your confidence as well. So tell yourself that you can do it with the current material and with the sort of correct strategy that you have, and make sure that you do make a correct strategy. Living in sort of, absolute ignorance is also something that I would not suggest, but have a certain sort of self-confidence in yourself. Have access to certain good materials, do ask around a lot. Make sure that you're getting the right knowledge from different places, and only after that make your decision. And I think that is roughly what I'd like to say. Make sure that you give your 100% in whatever that you're doing. And even if by some chance, because there is a lot of competition, you do fail at some stages of this examination, don't feel disheartened. Don't make it a question of, say, your self-worth. There are a lot of things that you can do otherwise as well. And even in this examination, if you do want to give another attempt, figure out your loopholes, work on them, but don't get disheartened, and take everything with a positive bent of mind.
Welcome back. Now let's take up some of the questions. Priya is asking, how would I come to know if I can crack this exam?
I think you can never know if you can crack this examination or not. Even people who have cracked this examination, even me, say 2 days before the final results came in, I didn't know if I would crack it or not. So the only thing I think you need is self-confidence, some sort of self-belief. And if you really want to do it, if this is something that really moves you, if cracking the civil services is something that, really excites Priya, I think she deserves to at least figure that out. Right? So I think giving an attempt and trying to do it is something that she should do. She should not question herself, but at the same time, with the correct strategy, with the correct material. And also, I think even if she doesn't get it, I think she shouldn't feel disheartened at the same time.
And this happens with students who are preparing on their own. For example, if you join a coaching class or an online class, you show your answers to the teacher. The teacher tells you this is where you are faltering. This is how you should write your answer. You're talking to your mentors regularly. What about individuals who are staying in the hinterland, who have no access to coaching industry, or for that matter, any mentor or teacher? How would they motivate themselves and understand that they can also crack this exam?
Yeah, I think this is a big challenge. But even though, like, I think people are isolated to a certain extent, I think that isolation is not like in today's day and age, it's not absolutely complete. So I think you can reach out to people. I would say that, when you're completely alone and you have access to no information, at that time cracking this examination or thinking about this can be very challenging. But nowadays there is access to information, there is access to people around you. So even something like YouTube or a certain, access to Telegram channels that sometimes people have. So even if you have a slight, mobile connection or mobile data of a certain extent, you can reach out. Secondly, I think try to figure out flaws by yourself. So, for example, try to seek out people, toppers of previous years. So their copies are sometimes provided online, or their strategies lots of people provide online. I personally have also tried to make a Telegram group where I've tried to put my notes. So even if you don't have the money to access coaching material or coaching classes or a mentor, I think a lot of extra effort would be required. I'm not denying that. The people, say in urban areas who have access to all of this, it'll be relatively easier for them. But I think if you put in the right amount of effort, and there are say sometimes government schemes where free, guidance is being provided by the government as well. So there are various avenues which you see, be it online channels, be it, other materials where toppers are putting in. A little amount of extra effort, I think, can really help those people.
Aman, I feel demotivated and directionless. Sometimes I study for 8 hours and there are days when I don't study at all. Please help.
Yeah, this again is something that happens to the best of us. But I think those 8 hours, when he studies 8 hours, is great. But when he doesn't study at all, I think certain days you can provide yourself when you're taking a break, when you don't feel like studying. I also did that. There were days when I didn't feel like studying at all. So I used to take that as a break. And at that time, not thinking about studying is also helping. Because if you're not studying, but you're still thinking about studying, that won't be a break for you. But take a proper break, go out with your friends, do something, but then come back with renewed vigor. So giving those breaks is important. But also, I think in terms of getting that motivation back, try to think why you started this examination in the first place. Try to remember that first phase. Try to remember why you gave this examination, why you decided to make this decision in the first place. That sometimes helps you in getting back to it. And it's, I think, easier said than done, but you have to put that, thing on yourself.
There's no alternative.
There's no alternative.
Shahid, instead of reading newspapers on a daily basis, can I follow a monthly current affairs magazine instead?
I think this here also different people have different strategies. Some people do not, use only other material for current affairs. I personally found the newspaper to be really helpful for me throughout my preparation. So I religiously went through it. I made notes for it, not for my prelims, but topic-based notes for my mains examination. Current affairs magazines also I went to the yearly compilations just before my prelims examination mainly. But I think the newspaper sometimes helps you in preparing certain in-depth opinions about a certain subject. Sometimes, for example, it helped me in, cherry-picking examples for my ethics answers, for my, say, GS2, GS3 answers. So I personally found it really helpful. I didn't see it as an alternative to my current affair magazines, but an adjunct to them. So for me, both were important.
So you can't rely on magazines alone to crack this exam?
Some people do, so I would not question the way that they have used it. But I personally found I used it a lot in my mains examination. Some people only use current affairs magazines, but I personally would suggest getting into the habit of reading the newspaper, even if you're sort of skipping them a few days. But say in building opinions, having a more wholesome picture, and that also I think selective. I think over a period of time you get to know what to read in a newspaper, what to not. The major reason why people don't want to read it, because sometimes it takes 2-3 hours to read a paper and you can do something else at that time. But smartly reading it and getting into the habit of reading it will gradually reduce the time also that you're spending on reading the paper.
We're talking something serious. Let's add some humor to this. You're a history student, and yet in this workshop you have given more examples from polity. Now, what is your favorite subject, history or polity?
I think history was something that I was sort of relatively more comfortable with. So I didn't have to work on adding a lot of examples in, say, history for my GS1 paper. But, say, polity is something that was more related to current affairs, or similarly governance. A lot of examples I felt enriched my answer. Similarly for ethics. So these are things that I relied on for the newspaper specifically for enriching my answers. History is something that I used examples from my cumulative sort of knowledge in my graduation.
And polity was the first subject that you followed in the tab?
Yeah, the tablet also, it was the first subject that I
saw. Shekhar is asking, what's the best strategy? Complete one subject and then take up another subject, or covering 2 to 3 subjects simultaneously?
Again, I think I can only say what I tried to do. Some people do this as well, but I personally tried to make sure that I was doing one subject or completing one subject and then moving to the next. Maximum, sometimes I used to take 2 subjects in a day, because sometimes you get bored doing one subject. Sometimes picking 2 to 3 subjects simultaneously can get a little tricky, because you can't complete any, and then, 1 quarter of one is done, 1 quarter of one. You don't get the sense of satisfaction also. And once you complete a subject, you can then, start attempting tests of that, be it for prelims, be it for mains. So that sometimes helps if you complete a subject and then move on to the next. So that time division, sometimes I used to do one subject in the first half and then optional, or sometimes I used to pick 2 subjects. So say history in the first half and something like geography in the second half. So
when is the right time to start answer writing practice? You should be done with the entire subject and then jump to answer writing? Or you should complete a significant chunk of the syllabus and then start writing answers?
I think if you're just starting out your preparation, if you just start writing answers after a few months, they won't be really good answers. I feel a certain amount of content is required. So making sure that at least 3 to 4 subjects that you've done 1 or 2 readings. After that, you'll know what to write also, because you'll have certain current affairs knowledge also. You'll have certain static knowledge also. If you start immediately writing in the first go, it'll be a little difficult. So I think 4 to 5 months of preparation where you have certain confidence, because sometimes if you start answer writing and you've not completed most of the syllabus, that will also be in your head. So certain background of 3 to 4 subjects that you've done, current affairs also, you have certain knowledge. Then I think you should start answer writing.
Your optional was history, but you've also interacted with a lot of civil services aspirants who have cracked this exam, cleared and qualified this examination. What would you recommend as optional subject for somebody who's from non-arts background?
So this is again, lots of people have asked me this. I would just suggest that, so from the just from the surface level, you can pick 3 or 4 things, for example, that if a person knows what is the subject content of sociology, knows what is the subject content of anthropology, similarly geography or something else. So based on just a cursory understanding, choose 3 or 4 subjects which you think are good for you or you would be comfortable with. And after that, talk to people who have attempted the subject, roughly go through the books, because I think books are easily available, be it online, so just roughly go through the material, see, I think, what interests you, what you would be comfortable reading for a long period of time. And I would again suggest, as I said, that prepare a list of, say, positives and negatives associated with that subject by talking to that person who has given this attempt. And so, say, for example, history. If someone asks me, should I take history? I am from an engineering background. I would say understand that, it's a very, very big optional. It's a very vast optional. So if you're comfortable with that, but the positive is say, for example, that it's static. There is no,
you have
not
covered
much
it
addition.
once, you can only revise it. There is no addition.
Yeah, exactly. So that is one positive. So understand what the positives and negatives of it are and then make your own decision. So I think they should do this preliminary time. They should spend a little time in understanding the nuances of every subject.
Priya is asking that I come from a poor background and I cannot afford coaching. Can I clear this examination without coaching? Please answer honestly.
Yeah, this is again something that I said. I think, again, I would say this again, that more than coaching, a certain guidance in terms of how to approach different stages of this examination, what to read, what not to read, and, things to improve in answer writing. I think that is more important. So that sort of access, if you don't have the resources to gain coaching.
And if I may interrupt here, people are from different background. There is a student who is from arts background, who has studied, just like you, studied history, studied political science, geography. But majority of the aspirants today are from engineering background, who have absolutely no idea about these social sciences and arts subjects. For them, what would you recommend? They have no idea.
That's true. Because I personally had, I had read this, for example, polity or history. So I found it easier when I was going through the NCRTs, when I was doing self-study and all of that. But for people who can't understand a certain geography concept or can't understand a certain economics concept, you don't have access enough material resources to sort of go to a coaching material. I think you can selectively, for example, if you're going through a certain book, say economics or say geography, you can then look at some online sources for that specific concept, try to understand that. So I think that should not be a hindrance to...
it is just that it will be time consuming.
It'll definitely be more time consuming, more effort will be involved, but people shouldn't think that, it's impossible, that
and
you
at the
should
same time,
completely
there
give
has
away.
to be somebody to guide that student. Maybe there are sources available online which are not trustworthy as well.
Yeah, that again is something that I do agree with, because lots of, sometimes these Telegram channels, even after, for example, I cleared this examination, there were lots of Telegram channels which came up, which were, doling out advice as to what to do, what not to do, and people were following it and all of that. So that also needs to be kept in mind. So, I would suggest that it is a tough road. I'm not saying that it'll be easy for them to do that, but if you absolutely don't have the resources for it, then also I think it shouldn't bog you down. Some extra effort has to be made. You have to make sure that, some double checking in terms of the sources that you're following, they are correct or they're wrong. But you have to put in some extra effort. But
after all, it's your dream.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to do everything.
You can't make excuses for it, but even if you're not able to, if you're getting some coaching and you can get access to it, then that's great. But even if you're not, it shouldn't be something that should pull you down, or you should treat it as an obstacle, or feel that I can't absolutely do it because I don't have the money and the resources. So this is something that I should completely put off the shelf and then not do it all. Because there are lots of examples who have completely who have an engineering background, who have done their education from government schools in extremely rural backgrounds, who have got top 10 ranks.
Yes.
So it's not something which is unachievable. You have to put in the extra effort. You have to make sure that you're following the correct sources, latch on to someone who can guide you, latch on to good material on the internet, try to find other some people give second-hand books if they have done, people who have completed their preparation, they do give their books. So some extra effort is required, but it's not something which is unachievable.
And dear Priya, I may have a solution for you. Every alternate week, we have scholarship tests, wherein people like you, students like you get up to 90% scholarship on our program. So you can avail that as well, and we'll be glad if you can avail that opportunity. One common question that is often asked, 24 hours. Do I have to study 24 hours? How many hours did you study?
I think obviously it's not humanly possible to study 24 hours or even 20 hours or 18 hours on a regular basis. I personally, people think that I'm sometimes hiding stuff in terms of when I'm saying that I didn't calculate my hours, but I actually don't know how many hours I studied. I didn't have an hour-based study timetable. Towards, say, for example, just before my prelims examination or mains examination, it did stretch to very, very long hours. I was just getting up to, eat food and sleep. So those were the only things that were taking my time. I think overall, regularly, it can't also be said that only 3-4 hours of study will be enough for you. At least, 6 to 8 hours on a regular basis is required, a minimum, I think, because simply in terms of the vast syllabus, if you have to quantify it in terms of hours. But again, there can be days when you can study 10 hours in a day and then, take a break. So figuring that out should be on you, but make sure that you are covering the syllabus, you are keeping up with your subject-based targets. That is something that I would suggest.
Okay, one question from me. I don't know how you would answer that question. There are hundreds of aspirants, lakhs of aspirants from far off places where they don't have access to a coaching institute. And they can't come to Delhi to attend a coaching institute, spending lakhs of rupees on various things. Would you recommend, if at all they need coaching, they need assistance, if at all, would you recommend that they can follow the tablet learning program or the online classroom program because they don't have any other alternative?
if they do have access to it, and if they can sort of afford it, I would say that, at least some sort of guidance that they can get. I personally went through the certain modules of the tablet program, which helped me get a preliminary sort of understanding as to how the subject is to be tackled. So if they can take it, I would say that they should.
One final motivational talk to the students. What would you say?
I would just say that, first of all, understand and try to figure out where your interest lies. What is something that wakes you up in the morning, or something that really moves you throughout the day. So try to first identify that. If it's the civil services, if it's something that you think really excites you, only then go for it. Don't go for it because of any external pressure or some sort of status that will come from it. So first, understand that. Secondly, also to understand that it's not going to be an easy journey. You guys sometimes only see the final result of it when the results come. So there'll be constant ups and downs. There'll be lots of stress. There'll be lots of anxiety. But if it's something that you really want to do, you will sort of sail through it and you will find something positive at the end of it. So that journey will definitely be really, really enriching for you. Make sure that you have a good strategy in mind. Make sure that you're sticking to a few source materials, materials that you're doing. Consolidate that material. Give in your 100% to a certain extent. Don't do it for anyone else. Don't make it very, very instrumental, whatever you're doing. Make sure that you're giving your 100%. At the same time, if you don't, achieve success, don't let it pull you down. Try to see everything that comes to you as, it's very difficult to say, because also right now I have qualified this examination, but try to see it positively. There are various other ways in which also you can give back to society or do other things. So don't let anything pull you down. Do give your 100% so that you don't feel sad that, if I could have done that better, I could have done that better. Do give your 100%, but after that, leave the results for the universe or anything else that you believe in. So that is all that I'm going to say. Also, all the very best for anyone who's giving this mains or the next prelims, and I hope all of you succeed.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shruti, for your insights on this exam and for guiding our students. And if you've watched this program, thank you so much. All the best. Take care.